his face, I didn't draw it in the original drawing, but if you think about where his brow line is coming all the way over to where these tufts start, so it's almost like he's got a mask on, that is the area that we'll work on first. So it's above the brow line all the way up through the ears. And I went ahead and very lightly penciled it in here just to give me a guide. So to start, you're going to take clean water and put it on the top of his head, in between the ears, and you can come down into his snout a bit. And then I'm going to pull some of the water up right into the side of his face and a little bit into the ears. This is going to be our lightest area, so we want this to have water on it first to make our paint a little lighter. And I'm going to grab about a half brush full of wet sienna and go ahead and put that into the water. You just want to ensure that you don't have this too dark. This is going to be, like I said, his lightest area. And now I'll start working up into his ears. Still kind of light. I don't want to go too dark yet, and I'm probably going to switch down to a smaller brush to help with some of these tricky lines. And now this side. And you can see that from adding that water down into his snout here, how I didn't go all the way down. My water came to about right here, and so I didn't go all the way down. So that is just kind of fading, which will give me time to work on the snout without there being a heavy line of dried paint there. So it just kind of fades away. Makes it easier when you have to go back and paint the snout. Okay, so I've got my first layer of paint in. It's still kind of wet, and I had never added a lot of water, especially to the ear sections. This middle section that we're going to leave light, I'm going to leave that alone now and start coming back in with a slightly deeper intense shade of my sienna and add that just to the ear sections. So I'm going right over what I already have and just adding a little bit more depth of color. Okay, so now we can start working on his snout. So I've got just a little clean water on my brush, and I'm going to start pulling this down So not a lot of water, added a little at the time. You just want this to be slightly damp, not over wet. So now I'm coming in with just a little bit of color on my brush. I still want this to be really light. And where this is all out of control, I just kind of push it up like it's fur and make it more symmetrical. So almost like I'm just giving him some indication of fur. Very light wash. And the bottom of his little mouth here is actually white. So I'm just letting my paint kind of fade off when I get down to this mouth area. This is going to be white, and we'll come back and add a little shadow to that later. So if this happened to you guys too, I'm taking a slightly bigger brush, and it's only just damp, not a lot of water, and I'm rubbing, it's almost like an eraser, so I rubbed a little off, wiped it on my towel, and I'm doing the same thing again just to get rid of that line. So pretty much a dry brush, only just slightly wet, and just fix that little line right up. Okay, so I'm gonna let this dry and then we'll work on adding some more detail. Okay, so we're now gonna paint this part here that's kind of like his mask. So I'm gonna turn my paper to make it easier on myself. No need to wet first, but I am going in with light watery paint because remember, this is our first layer of paint, so we don't want to go too dark, just slightly darker than what you've already added. And I'm painting the area around his eye, so use an appropriate brush to be able to get around those tricky little areas. And turn my paper this way. And while we're waiting for that to dry, we can go ahead and put our first layer onto his legs. So same thing, I'm going in with light watery color, and I'm just going to put a pass of color over his legs.